everyone. This is Jinx Thing speaking in on all of you. I've got my guest here today, and it is Checking Convictions. Hi, Linda.
Hello, everybody. How you
How
doing?
how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great as always, and anxious to see what you have done as always.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's say hi to some people in the audience here. We got Jennifer Manning. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, TTM. Dark Side. Sean. Banana Man. Angie Dickinson. Alice. Let's scroll up a little. Nosy.
Yoris, wink, wink.
Yours. Ooh, ooh. We got a bunch of people here. I have a
We
hard time
got the
scrolling
governor.
and talking at the same time,
We
obviously.
got the governor. We got the banana
We got the
man.
governor.
We have Alice.
Wiggle giggle. Who wiggles when they giggle? How do you know that? You haven't seen me
I used to think it was cute when I'd walk and my fat jiggled and tickled me. Now it don't jiggle
giggle.
no more. It don't tickle no more either.
Uh oh.
Okay, enough of that.
All right. Well, let's get to what we're here
Just
for
Jones,
before we get off topic.
which is very easy for us to
Yes,
do.
it's always easy for us to do. I put out my first poll, everybody. I got a community page after I got 500 of you guys to sub to me, so thank you very much for that. I put out my first community poll, and it was, what did you want to see next? And you guys all voted, and the jury for Avery had won out. So I put together the little bit of information I have on the jury. This is how they're connected to people in the county or other people in the case. And I put a slideshow together as usual. So Linda's going to help me keep comments and stuff going here in the chat because I won't be able to see any of it. And I will open the page. Let's see here. So this is Making a Murderer's Stephen Avery's trial. Let me blow it up to a slideshow from the beginning. I'm not going to read these articles, all of them. This I just put in here. I wonder why it's doing this weird thing. Okay. This is just to show that there were 8 men, 8 women picked for the jury trial. You can always go back and screenshot these, or I will eventually link all of the sources in the description if I get around to it. They're definitely in this, and I will link this slideshow for you. So 8 women and 8 men were picked, and we have a list of what they were. We didn't have names. I didn't have names. We didn't have names in the beginning, so I had this little list from one of the articles, and I'm going to go through this list by who is who in this list, and we'll start. And I did it in the order of this list. So we'll start with Laura Barber. She's the first one on the list. Avoiding news coverage of the Hallback case, I have a mute button on my TV. That's getting a really healthy workout. So I did make sure that they were the people by what they said, and I did post here the questions that were asked of her. She said the question was, what if anything have you heard about the blood vial, a vial of blood that may be at issue in this case? And she said that if it came up after I got my paper from the courthouse, and I have a mute button on my TV that's getting a real healthy workout. And he asks, okay, so the answer is you just don't know anything at all about it? And she says, no, I don't. Now, Laura, I didn't find any actual connections to anybody at this time. So we'll skip on to Julie Dorn. Julie Dorn was 46 from, it says Chilton, but she was actually from New Holstein, which is, I think, on the border. I think it might actually be in both counties the way that it is. And she says that she hasn't followed the case closely. He says, television, all right. And have you followed any of the recent coverage at all in this case? And she says no. And he says, no, specifically, what do you recall about the case from information provided by the media, particularly the television? And she said, from what I have seen, from what I have watched on television, yeah, that she was missing, and then the arrest. And I think it wasn't too much. It was just, those are the 2 things that caught my attention. And he says, all right. She goes, I don't remember. I mean, I really don't follow it. So she doesn't really follow the news closely. What's interesting about Dorn here is Dorn went to Dassey's trial with Richard Muller, and she goes, and they asked her why she's going, and she says, and it says, Julie Dorn and Rick Muller want some answers. The two members of the Manitowoc County jury that listened to the 5 weeks of testimony in Stephen Avery's case last month were back in court Monday as testimony began in Brendan Dassey's trial. And to get some answers, they both said when asked why they were attending. She also states in this article, she says, Dorn says the panel eventually acquitted Avery on the mutilation charge because prosecutors didn't provide enough evidence of the cutting and burning of the body. She said jurors don't think the body was cremated. It was mutilation, all right, she said. They didn't give us enough. So it seems like she did not get enough proof that the bones were burned. I mean, that's just kind of interesting. Maybe if they had learned that there were bones in the quarry, it would have been more significant to her. I also threw this in here. This is from her page on Facebook. When all of this had come out for Making a Murderer, she put up one of these "Live Life Like Teresa" posters with the blue heart around her face, and she says, some of her friends are like, did you know this lovely woman? I'm sorry that this is such an emotional issue for you. She says, thank you for the hugs. You're a great cousin. And then another friend said, I don't know why they are to bring this up after so many years. I know that it's not only is it hard on you, but also on Teresa's family. I just wonder how much money those two women paid Avery to make this documentary. If they did, stay strong. And she just says, thank you, my friend. But then she also posted a picture of Teresa Halbach in the Stephen Avery is guilty page on Facebook. So it says a lot about her thought process. She still thinks he's guilty, it seems. Which is interesting since she didn't have the answers when she had convicted him, right? So, okay. Anyway, anything, Linda? Any comments? Any questions? 2 jurors down. Did she leave me again? She just tends to do that sometimes.
No, I didn't leave you.
Okay.
I couldn't find my
Okay.
unmute button, damn it. Nobody wants to hear me talk. No, everything seems to be fine. Jennifer asked a question the same time you were answering it, so that one's already done.
Okay.
Continue.
Okay, then let's carry on with Marion Flint, who was a 73-year-old Manitowoc homemaker, and she says, I told God I can't do this on my own, but I know he'll know. Oop, 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 oop. What did I do? Let's not do that. I'll know he'll know, and he'll help me do this. So her testimony was, okay, why? I think it's good learning experience. If he would be guilty for the family of Teresa Halbach, he should be found guilty beyond the reasonable doubt. And if he is not guilty, he would be found not guilty. And you want to be one of the 12 people who make that kind of decision? And she says, that's a tough call. I realize that it's a big responsibility. And I told the people out in the outer room that when I came in here last Monday, I told God, I can't do this on my own, but I know that he will know and he will help me do this. On her, I couldn't find any family relations to anybody in the county or anything either. But we will get to those people, like Diane Free. Diane Free was 52, lived in Manitowoc, and was a library aide for the Manitowoc County Library, possibly. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it was just a school library. I believe the media has found him guilty. They're not going to tell me what to think. And from her testimony, she put, okay, and as I note from your report, you don't really have any opinions regarding the circumstances facing Mr. Avery, his guilt or his innocence or any of that. And she says, no, I believe the media has found him guilty. Okay, they say. I believe they can make you believe whatever they want. And he says, all right, but have you been swayed by them? And she says, no. So she doesn't let them tell her what to think.
Boy,
now,
is
Diane,
she's speaking the truth, isn't she? The media. She sure spoke the truth there.
Well, a lot of these people are getting their information from the media. Even people calling in that are cops or reserves, they're like, oh, well, I heard on the media. It's like, don't you keep in contact with your
But I mean,
job.
this is, I don't know, this is the first time that I really, I've heard somebody speak up saying that the media found him guilty, which I firmly believe that press
Well, of
conference
course
did it
they
all.
did. Yes. And if I remember right, all 100, there was like 100 people, and everyone said that he was guilty except one. So I don't know
Right.
which juror that was that answered no, because we don't have those questionnaires. We just have a copy of the questionnaire that's blank. I would love to see the questionnaires that these people answered. But Diane Free used to be, oh, I think I put these in here backwards. Let's go. I'll go this way. Walter P. Dueno Sr., that is her father. And his survivors include Geneva, that's her mother. And then you'll see down here, she's down here, that she's a daughter of his. Where is she? Did I miss it? 4 sons-in-laws, Diane and Gary Free. So that is her husband. That's how she becomes Diane Free. Walter worked 32 years for the Manitowoc City Police Department as a lieutenant and shift commander until his retirement until 1983. He enjoyed hunting. So this is the daughter of a cop from the area. This is a thin blue line daughter, in my opinion. I don't believe she would have actually have agreed that the police would plant evidence or any of that because of her father's connection to the police department. He was a police pistol squad, had a successful year. They used to have like competitions, and the
Yeah.
Manitowoc Police Department's pistol team completed its most successful season, and one of the people on that was her dad. Was her dad?
32 years as a lieutenant shift commander. Well, isn't Andy a shift commander? Yeah, I don't
He
think she
was.
would have.
He
She
was. He
wouldn't
was.
have done crap. She would not have swayed away from the police.
I don't think so either. And then I did pull up some of her comments on. She also put this live life like Teresa, blue poster heart, and so I pulled up some of them and put them here on the side. I'm currently watching this, man. Was this commissioned by the defense? And Diane says, I am so insulted. Try to keep telling myself that it is a movie, not a docuseries. And then somebody tells her, I'm at the part where the new jury is in deliberations. I can't keep my eyes open, so I'm going to bed. Don't spoil the ending for me. They might find him not guilty this time. I don't know who's made that comment, but
Oh,
when
that's interesting.
I wanted to keep privacy for these people that I don't know. I think the local news should come down to Manitowoc and interview some of the jurors and let them have their say. Thank goodness for Teresa's brother to show that people from Wisconsin aren't all a bunch of hicks. And Diane says, we shouldn't have to defend ourselves. We know the facts. And there's no doubt in my mind that Stephen Avery is a murderer and exactly where he belongs. The movie says crooked cops, crooked judge, crooked lawyers, crooked jury. Makes me sick. Well, here you are, the daughter of a cop. I mean, I don't remember reading that in any of her stuff. I'd have to go back and actually read that. But it's interesting because this woman's daughter has been defending the jury on one of these groups I've joined in Facebook called All Things Manitowoc, and her daughter's in there, and she's like, "It was one man who killed her," and I was like, so then I know your mom doesn't know the whole truth because according to Dassey's, it was 2 men. But she stopped talking to me. I told her I would love to have a conversation with her mom, but she never did hook that up for me. Maybe another day. And then we have Henry Gray. Henry Gray was 69 at the time. He was Michigan retired. He says on Avery's wrongful conviction, honestly, I thought the sheriff's department bungled the job. And that was for the 85 case. So the question was, okay, and what was your reaction to that when the conviction gets thrown out because of the DNA? And he says, honestly, I thought the sheriff's department bungled the job. And he says, and that the state crime lab got it with the DNA was Gregory Allen's was the guy who committed the rape and assault, not Stephen Avery. That's my understanding, yes. And did you hear about the lawsuit? And he says yes. And what was your reaction to that? I thought he had a right to it. But this guy This juror was released because of a death in his family, and it says Chilton, Manitowoc County Circuit Court Judge Patrick Wilson proceedings Friday by announcing he had released a juror whose close family member had died. The move came one day after Willis retained a juror who said she recognized a prosecution witness. Willis said it was reasonable to release the juror whom he said was traveling to another part of the country to attend the family matters. Willis did not identify the jury, citing a concern that not all the jurors' family members had learned of the death. And that was him. That was Henry Gray. He was excused. There was nothing I could find on him either as being related to anybody or having any connection. This is Nathan Klein. He was the youngest of the jurors, male, 25, from Two Rivers, a carpenter. And they say, news is unfair because it's giving the public the presumption that Avery's already guilty. So he asks him, now, can you elaborate on that? When you say the news is so one-sided, what do you mean by that? And he says, a lot of the times when the news would start, you would see the pictures of Stephen Avery with the black and white striped jail suit. He says, right. He says, almost implying that he's guilty already before the court has done their thing. What about that? Is that fair or unfair? Very unfair, I believe. And he says, okay, well, tell us about that. Why is that unfair? Because it's giving the public the presumption that he is already guilty. All right. And he's entitled to the presumption of innocence, correct? Right. Entitled to a fair trial. So just another Manitowoc juror that lied on the stand, in my opinion, but whatever. I didn't find any family connections to any immediate officers. He did have an officer in his family, but that officer has been long gone before he was even born. So, and it's many generations back. So I didn't actually put it in here. What was interesting is he is also a volunteer firefighter for the town of Two Rivers, and they had all those firemen opening all the vehicles over there. So I haven't found if he knows any of them at this point or anything like that, but he might, and we just don't know. And then we have Richard Muller. We all know Richard Muller was juror 11. He was male, 41, from Cleveland, a retiree and a band member, and he says he doesn't really care for the news. They said, how about television and radio? He says, I'm not into the television much, or because there's nothing really on there I care to see. All right. And the radio, I listen to music. That's about it. Okay, so you don't listen to any news shows or talk radio. It's just for the music. No, I don't really care for it. I'm sorry. He says, I don't really care for the news. He's like, all right, just haven't shown an interest in it. He's like, no, I'm more into music and stuff like that. Now, we know Muller was removed from the jury because they put in an alt for him. And I took this from I guess this would be the first appeal, when they're talking about how he was removed. And this says that the attorneys understood when they agreed to Muller's questioning and removal that the information conveyed to them from the judge was at best secondhand. However, they did not know that Sheriff Pagel was the conduit between Muller and the judge. Strain knew the information came from the sheriff's department, but did not remember it being attributed to Sheriff Pagel. Buting testified that had he known Pagel had spoken with Muller, he would have objected and probably moved for a mistrial. Moreover, when he agreed to have the judge speak with Muller, he never expected that Pagel would be involved in that communication. Buting viewed Pagel as far from a disinterested person, given he was the supervisor of several law enforcement officers who testified for the state, who, in Buting's opinion, should have had no contact with the jurors. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a mention of him going to the bar or restaurant that they were eating at and giving them the okay to drink while they were at the restaurant. And he really should never have been in touch with any of those jurors, just as much as they shouldn't have been in touch with the jurors in Brendan's trial when they brought him pizza and stayed in the jurors' room for way too long. So I just put him in here. I didn't find any connections with him to anybody, so nothing there. But let's move to William Moore. William Moore was 60 from Michigan. He was retired. He says, in conversations with family, he maintains Avery could not be guilty. So the questions are, all right, now you indicated that in the discussions with family members, you maintain that it's possible that Mr. Avery could be innocent. Is that correct? That's correct. All right. And what's your thinking, or how did that come to pass? Well, I believe every person is innocent until proven guilty. And I will look at the evidence presented and come up with hopefully, a fair and just judgment on this. Now let's talk about Moore. Moore had a wife. That's why they're asking him about family. You can go and read the juror 40 years over on StephenAveryCase.org or even foulplay.site. This is something that was passed around pretty early on. I don't know where it came from, but it was from a personal committee, and it was the meeting was called in order at 9 a.m. and it was in 2006. I think it was October 10th, 2006. So there was no correspondence or public input. So this says Lynn Zygmunt requested the committee's approval to hire a temporary employee, Alice Moore, retired clerk of the court's employee, to assist in the criminal unit for a short period of time. It is anticipating that an employee from the criminal unit will be in Calumet County approximately 6 to 8 weeks, assisting Judge Willis while the Avery trial is being conducted, and will again be out of the office for a period of time during the Dassey's trial. Alice Moore is familiar with the criminal unit and would be able to assist with time-sensitive work while these trials are being conducted. If assistance is not brought in, the department would undoubtedly be paying overtime to other employees to complete the necessary work. Lynn anticipates Alice may work approximately 4 days per week during this time. A temporary employee could be utilized for up to 6 months without violating the union contract. A motion was made, and Mark Wardort and second by Janowski to approve the request. Motion carried. So they hired Alice Moore back, who worked for the clerk of the court and had retired. And it just so happens that is William Moore, juror that was picked, wife. Random? I highly doubt random. I put a few more things in here because of the family connection. They ask him, all right, and you're not familiar with any discussion of any blood or blood evidence or anything like that? There was some vial or blood vial found, Moore said. And then they ask him, okay, what do you recall or remember about that? It was supposedly tampered with. And he says, all right. All right. And he goes, it was unsecured or in an unsecured area. And he says, all right. And do you have any recollection as to where that area would be or any other details about that? And he says, I believe it was in the clerk of the court office. He goes, okay, all right. And the fact that there's the possibility of some evidence that's associated with the police where your wife works, is that going to present any problems for you? And he says, no. And if the court instructs you in the end, if you serve on the jury, the court instructs you to decide this case only on the evidence you hear in the courtroom, not anything you may know or think you know from the media or from your wife or from a neighbor or any other source than outside this courtroom. Can you follow the instructions scrupulously to decide this case only on the evidence you heard in court? And he says, yes. And he says, including if that evidence were to conflict with something you think your wife might say if you ask her, can you follow the court's rule to decide the case only on the evidence you actually hear in this courtroom? And he says, yes. And then the question is, any questions at all about that? And he said, I wouldn't be asking my wife because if I would be on the jury, I would be prohibited to talk to her about it. But it didn't prevent him from talking about it prior. I mean, he knew all about the blood vial and everything else, right? Was that in the news? I don't even recall if that was in the news. And then he gets picked to be a juror, not even 4 months after she started working back there. I don't like this case at all. So let's move on. Any questions? Lenny, questions? Let's ask that first. I've been through a few.
Paul Ward says, how many states were followed this at the time? Well, he said Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois. I can tell you, I live in Minnesota. I never heard of the Avery case over here, ever, until after I seen the documentary. So they did not cover it over here.
I don't recall hearing about it either. And I was actually
but
looking
they
up
did in Florida
during that time.
They did in Florida. Yeah, because
Florida.
Sunshine Christina followed the case from Florida. And that's what I thought was weird. Local states.
Well, we can't say that it was on Nancy Grace, which was a national show for her on HLN. So there were some news programs talking about it nationally, but I don't recall it. I mean, it doesn't mean that it wasn't there. I don't remember it. But being that it was on Nancy Grace at least once that I know of, that there is a possibility that people all over the country could have picked up on it being on Nancy Grace. Nancy Grace was very popular back in the day.
My dad used to watch that, and I never heard of the case. I mean, I'm not kidding you. When I ask people if they've ever heard of it, they're like, no.
Well, and mind you, if it wasn't a huge case where she was talking about it every day, like when she had the trial for Casey,
and Scott Peterson did the same thing, right?
So I mean, it was just probably one time here and one time there around the trial or whatever, but it wasn't a lot. But some people may have seen it, but it wasn't like, I don't recall it being like headline news every local channel talking about it or anything. And Chicago was supposedly a possibility of somewhere she may have gone. So I'm kind of surprised I don't recall any of it from here.
Exactly.
Chicago. Anyway.
Correct her name. Nasty disgrace. You are so right.
Was that nosy?
That was Banana Man correcting us.
Oh, okay. Anyway. Let's move on to Paul Nielsen. He was a 35 Manitowoc man who was a mechanic. And he says, on sacrifice to serve, my savings account wouldn't probably be drained, but I wouldn't would probably be drained, but I would not starve. So the answer, I started with an answer on his because this was too big. Well, I think for anybody with going without wages for, that period of time, I think that would pose some type of problem. I would think, my savings account would probably be drained, but I don't think I would die because of it. I don't think I would starve to death because of it. And they say, all right, but do you have concern as to whether or not you would have sufficient income to meet your expenses? And he says, oh, definitely. Yeah, I would say so. I have bills like anyone else, loan payments that I do have to make just like anyone else. And he says, all right. So that's just to connect him to his little saying in the paper. But with Paul Nielsen, we have here is Paul Nielsen's father was the chief deputy sheriff, and he was picked by a committee in 1972. And it says, at a joint meeting of the Law Enforcement and Judiciary Committee and the Personnel Committee of the County Board of Supervisors, Friday night, a new chief deputy sheriff was picked for Manitowoc. Appointed to this position, according to Sheriff George Wanish, was Trooper Kenneth R. Nielsen, 34, of Wisconsin State Patrol. Nielsen, a native to Sheboygan, his wife, the former Carol Seifert of Sheboygan, and their 2 sons and 2 daughters reside on Herman Road in Manitowoc. So this is Paul Nielsen's father working as chief deputy. He had an accident and he did return to work. That was in 1977, I believe. This article is about him underwent the surgery early in January at the Sheboygan Hospital, but he did come back. But I want to make a point because when he left, it was none other than Eugene Couché who took his job. So that means at some point, Kenneth Nielsen, father to juror Paul Nielsen, worked under Sheriff Kosarik, who was being sued by the county, by Avery, and the county by Avery. So I put this article in here, and 32-year-old Heartland resident Eugene Cush will become the county's chief deputy sheriff effective February 12th. This was in, I think, 1979, I think this was. So this is how Couche became working for the sheriff's department that wrongfully convicted Avery in 85, was that Chief Deputy Nielsen left his job to become another part of, the government or the county child support agency coordinator in July. So they needed to fill it. So here you have another man who is the son of a high up deputy of the sheriff's department for at least some time under Sheriff Kosarik, who was being sued. And there's something else I think is interesting about him. Here I put in the deacon, his obituary. He died a few years ago, and I just wanted to put this in here. You guys can freeze frame it later, but he is listed as a son, and they list his one brother here at the bottom, William Nielsen, which is important because I put this up here too, just to remind you, he was a sheriff's department and for the county and a state patrolman, but he is survived by 4 children: Paul T. Nielsen, Manitowoc, and his girlfriend Lisa Wiegert. I have not found any connection to those Wiegerts, but she is related to Ryan Wiegert, who was a fireman, I believe, in Manitowoc, and I think he was on the property, but I don't know when they started dating, so I don't know if it would have mattered. I don't know if he was called to testify, but William Nielsen was also listed, and he's got other nieces, nephews, and other relatives. And let's go on to the next page, because this is him talking about his news resources. He says, okay, with respect to your news source, could you tell us where, if you checked a number of potential news sources from radio to television, newspaper, neighbors, and things of that sort. If you were to think about it now, what would you say is the medium in which you get most of your information? He said, I would probably say the newspaper. The newspaper. Okay, do you regularly read the newspaper? No, not regularly, no. I would say like 2 or 3 times a week. That's pretty regularly to me. Okay, have you been following this particular case with any interest in the newspaper or television? And he says, I have read about it, but I haven't really followed it with any interest. So the reason I bring this up is because Andrew Nielsen is Paul Nielsen's first cousin by William, the brother that I just mentioned in the obituary. And guess what he was writing about at the time of this case? Details differ on time, size of fire on Avery property. Andy Nielsen. DA to look into Avery sexual assault allegations. Brown County Zawowski tapped as special prosecutor. Andy Nielsen. Avery jurors, your closing arguments. Deliberations could start today. Andy Nielsen.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, they're all connected somewhere, aren't they?
First cousin writing about this case. Him admitting he reads the newspaper 2 or 3 times a week, which is not regularly to him, and that he gets it from the newspaper. So you know, this is his like first cousin. I have to wonder if how often they talked about this case. I don't trust this guy either. Anyway, let's move on. Any questions about Paul Nielsen and his family connections? Oh wait, I have one more thing on him.
Okay, well,
this shows Paul Nielsen, spelled with O-N, so it might be spelled wrong, of Manitowoc, unbolts an engine from a wreck in the firm shop. Remember, he's a mechanic. Nielsen said that each car is numbered to help keep track of the parts inventory and computer. So it says, thanks to increased federal and state environment regulations, salvage yards can no longer simply store scrapped vehicles. Instead, yards must follow an intricate recycling process. Hazardous waste items must be removed and disposed of properly. These include tires, windshield wipers, batteries, mercury switches, such as those which operate hood and trunk lights, and all fluids, gasoline, radiator, freon, windshield washer, and oils from the engine, transmission, and clutch, said Chuck and Jim Herman, co-owners of Cleveland Auto Sales and Salvage.
How
Now,
the
not
heck can you
100%
get?
sure, but I do believe this is Nielsen, pictured working on an engine in 2000, and I have to wonder if he worked at Cleveland Auto Sale and Salvage. This is owned by the Hermans family. Chuck and Jim, Rob, and Todd are all brothers. A call to them yielded no results, as they said they have no employee records that go back that far. So I could not verify if it was him or wasn't as an employee in 2000 prior to trial. This would make him know the Hermans, Cleveland
Well,
Autos.
Sherry says she definitely thinks that's him.
I think it looks a lot like him. I think the receding hairline's the same, the
Oh, it looks
nose,
like.
the ear, the chin. This is him much older, I think, a couple of years after, it's got to be like
Put his face
2014.
over the other face. You'll see it. It looks the same to me.
I think,
Handpicked Ward. Paul
but
Ward
the
says.
problem is they only say he works for the firm's shop, and this article is about a bunch of different salvage yards, but every other picture mentions where the person's working, and this is the picture. It follows this thing about Herman's, so I'm believing that he worked at Herman's and he knows who the Hermans are, but
Oh, I agree.
that's speculation. I do not know for sure. Like I said, I actually had a friend call Cleveland Auto and said that they were looking to hire Paul as an employee and wanted to know if he worked there when he said he worked there. And as a human resource office, that's about all you can answer, is when they were hired and when their last day was. They can't say whether they were fired or, if they had any good. If I think they can ask if they will hire him back. I think that's the only other question you can really ask a human resource office about a employee or an ex-employee. Anyway, that's all I have on Nielsen. He's a very complex person. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. I really don't. So let's move on. Barbara Schmidt, 59, Two Rivers, homemaker, asked if Avery must have done something, but also must be presumed innocent. Would put it that way exactly. I don't know what she's talking about. This is a weird question and answer. She's like, the question's like, okay, what is that? Well, strike that. Do you think that Mr. Avery is presumed innocent right now? And she says, yes, sir. Do you think that he must have done something or he wouldn't be here? We wouldn't have gotten this far in the proceedings, so that we're coming up on the trial. He says, yes. She goes, yes, sir. I would put it that way exactly. And he goes, pardon me? And she goes, I would put it that way exactly. You think he must have done something? And she goes, well, yes. Why do you think that? Well, because otherwise he wouldn't be in the courtroom. So do you think he's guilty or do you think he's innocent? This woman, I didn't find anything, I don't think, on her family. So we'll just move on from her. I just thought that was a very odd exchange. She obviously doesn't know that he is innocent until proven guilty. So
Yeah, some
it
of them. Yeah,
has
it's
nothing to do
funny.
with him being in the courtroom at all. Anyway, because somebody accuses you of something does not make you guilty of
Hi,
anything.
Lulu. Say hi to Lulu.
Hey,
Justice.
Lulu. Been a while. Love when you come in.
Okay,
We're on
go ahead.
August Shewitt. We're on August Shewitt. We're getting there. We're getting through these. This is August Shewitt. He was 69, Manitowoc retired man. Wouldn't assume guilt if Avery didn't testify. So the question was, okay. And if Mr. Avery decided not to testify, or if we, with him, decided that, I think the court would tell you in so many words that a defendant has an absolute right not to testify, and that you may not consider that in any way as evidence of guilt or consider it at all in deciding whether the state has proven Mr. Avery guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And he said he understood that. Now, August Shewitt is an interesting fellow. There used to be a Shewitt store in Manitowoc. It was like 150 years running, and when he closed it, he ended up giving it to his son-in-law through his stepdaughter. So not even his own kids. He gave it to his stepdaughter's son-in-law. He basically sold it to them or whatever he did. he's now running this store. He's renamed it to Cook's Corner, and he asks for a loan. So I just put a couple of clippings in here. Cook's Corner's loan is smart for downtown. We're happy the city council tossed its support behind Pete Burback, who is asking for approximately $450,000 in loans in order to maintain his downtown business, Cook's Corner. And then it says other downtown shops, stores, and restaurants. Oh, sorry. Burback's critics blame him for the downfall of Schuett's department store, but they forgot the store was in declining physical shape and shopping trends had shifted away from downtown by the time Burback took over the store from August Schuett, his wife Kathy's stepfather. The city loaned Burback $50,000 to renovate the building back then, and he has paid back all but $7,800. According to records at City Hall. So Burback has shown he pays his debts. He's not the only business downtown to receive startup money or assistance from the city revolving loan fund, which is intended to fuel economic recovery in the downtown district. So here's August Schuett, 75. He's retired and spends some time helping his son-in-law, Pete Burback, at Burback's Cook's Corner Cook's Corner store. Schuett and his sister Lorraine operated Schuett's department store in downtown Manitowoc for many years, selling everything from clothing to appliances. So he is definitely still working with his son-in-law, probably knows about these loans. Nearly $90,000 was owed by Cook's Corner. This is in January of 2007, right before trial. And it says Pete and Kathy Burback, the former owners of the downtown Cook's Corner kitchen supply store, which closed January 31st, have approximately $90,000 in unpaid loans outstanding to the city of Manitowoc and the state of Wisconsin. He convicts Avery, and in August of 2007, there's an editorial by somebody very interesting. It says, suing Burback seems pretty petty and ridiculous. The city is going to sue Pete Burback, Cook's Corner, to recover $69,635.60. He has paid back $369,956 of the $350,000 loan the city extended to him in 2003. So he has paid back the entire principal plus $19,000 of the interest incurred. He enthusiastically operated and maintained attraction in the city for 12 years. He attracted consumers from all over the U.S. He made every attempt to pay back what he owes and did an impressive job with his ongoing out-of-business sale to repay the majority of his debt. He came out of the endeavor with his dignity, determined to avoid bankruptcy. He and his family have been contributing members of the community. His action on the city's part seems petty and ridiculous to me. Pete Burback brought so much to this community. The sheer volume of tourists that he attracted for 12 years is immeasurable. Just ask the other downtown businesses. As for his announcement that he plans to open another store in Ashwaubenon, I don't know if I said that right. Good luck to him. He has a family to support, and with the determination to try again, I hope he can make it work. Betsy Blitz Kasurik, Two Rivers. Guess who that is? Guess. Come on, guess who that is. Guess. Come on, guess. That is Sheriff Kasurik's wife.
Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me.
Asking them to forgive Schuett's stepson-in-law of his debts that he owed. Was that payment? You gotta wonder. I'm sorry.
Yeah, everybody here so far has had a tie to somebody. They lied about fucking their being guilty by media, but they hasn't swayed their minds. Let's get real here. I think the only honest one was probably Rick Muller, and he got called out for it. He had some major accident when it wasn't, just so he would leave the thing because they weren't going to sway him.
I was kind of reading some of that stuff about Muller, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Like, he had talked to his wife. His wife had kind of said something about it, and then he comes back. The bailiff comes back later and is like, "Oh, it was a huge totaled car, everything like that," and it wasn't. So it
No.
made him worry more. And,
And I think it was a setup to get him out of there. I do.
of course, because he wasn't going to budge
Because he
for
would not
Carl.
be swayed by the bullshit.
Mhm.
You that's a fair juror. Okay. Might be
Right.
from the town. You might know something about it, but you're going in there and you're going in it with an unbiased opinion, an open mind. You're going to look at the evidence and strictly the evidence. And if they can prove their case, they can. I mean,
And
honestly.
he named Carl Wardman, one of the jurors, as being one of the bullies, but there was 3, he said. So now I'm wondering if the 3 are Diane Free, daughter of a cop,
Yep.
Paul Nielsen, son of a cop, and then Carl Wardman, which we'll
Family
see in a
press
few,
person.
is also connected to the sheriff's department in several ways.
Of
So
course they are. Anybody that has a blue line somewhere between them. But anyway,
right.
continue. We're doing good here.
Let's move on with Daniel Slabby. He was actually the floor person or foreman, or however you say it, for the jury. He's the one who sent the letter that they wanted to hear Bobby testimony and stuff back. He was from Two Rivers. He was in maintenance, 38 years old at the time. He says, unlikely police would frame someone. It's unlikely police would frame someone. I really don't know what they would gain from it. So his questions were going, okay, in your mind, how likely is it that a law enforcement agency would conspire to convict an innocent person? Very likely, somewhat likely, not very likely, or not likely at all. And he says, not very likely. And he says, and why would you say that? I really don't know what they would gain from it. Well, they would gain getting $36 million civil lawsuit off of them. How about that? Okay, anyway, that was just my 2 cents. And then they ask, okay, in your mind, how likely is it that a law enforcement agency would plant or tamper with evidence to secure an arrest and or a conviction? Very likely, somewhat likely, not very likely, not at all likely. And he says, not very likely again. And he says, okay, and again, any particular reason why you have that general opinion? And he says, same reason. So just because, what would they gain from it? And we all know what they were gaining from it. They were gaining a lawsuit that was going to be settled for $400,000 so that he could pay for his defense instead of winning anything close to the 36 million he was on. What I find interesting about Daniel Slabby is they had when in their questionnaire they ask if they know anybody of these names that are in a list, and Scott Taddick was a witness and he was named. And I found that Dan Slabby in recent years was friends with Scott Taddick. So I thought, well, maybe they were just friends after the fact, like they didn't know each other until after the trial. But what I found was that they went to the same high school in the same year. Daniel Slabby was 1 year ahead of Scott, but the area is very small. The high school is very small. I have a hard time believing that they didn't know each other in high school. I don't know. So I just found that an interesting connection, because if he actually knew Taddick before the trial and didn't say anything, that would be bad. Anyways, that's all I have on Slabby. Nancy Steinmetz was a telephone operator from Newton, 52 years old. She was the alternate that took over got sworn in for Muller. She took Muller's spot. So on where she gets her news, and she says not much of anywhere. And it says, Miss Steinmetz, where would you say you get most of your news from? The television, newspaper, or other sources? And she says, not much of anywhere. I was working night shift, so I didn't watch the news. Don't get a newspaper. We do get a Newsweek, which I read a little bit once in a while, but that's about it. I didn't find any connection with anybody with her either. No family connections, no history that I can even find. And in fact, sometimes I don't even know if I spell Steinmetz right. It might be I-E-N and instead of E-I-N. I think there's 2 ways of spelling it, but I haven't really found anything that's related to L-E or county or anything like that. Terry Tame, however, we heard when we were talking about Henry Gray, I read a little article about one of the jurors knowing one of the witnesses for the prosecution, which was, well, let's read this first. She was 47. customer service from Manitowoc. She's learned not always to believe what the media says. Another one who doesn't believe what the media is saying, supposedly. And it says, do you think that sometimes people in the media, the way it's portrayed, they may seem guilty or that it's not a cut and dry case, but in reality, things may be very different? And she says, right. And he says, and you think you could look at this case that way? I could look at it very objectively. Like, I guess I have learned not to always believe what the media says. You are familiar with the concept of the presumption of innocence, I assume. And she says, maybe. What do you mean, maybe? Whatever. Oh my God. I didn't go any further with her. You guys can read the jury voir dire. I'll post some links later. This jury, though, this one wrote to the judge. She had the bailiff send it to the judge. Juror Terry Tem informed me. Oh, this is from the bailiff, I think. Informed me during the last short break that she had been a juror some time ago in a civil case where Detective Dave Remaker was the plaintiff in a civil injury case. She did not know he was involved in this case until he was sworn in today and testified. She wants to know if this is a problem. So they did not remove her. So it says, a juror told the court February 22nd that she recognized Manitowoc County Sheriff's Detective David Remaker during his testimony because she served on a jury in a 2000 personal injury civil trial that awarded Remaker $170,000 stemming from when his squad car was rear-ended in 1999. The woman said she remembered little about the case and that she did not recall if Remaker testified. Strang argued that
Bullshit.
the woman should be removed from the panel because her objectivity was compromised because she had already made a decision about Remaker's credibility by endorsing the six-figure award. Willis denied Strang's request, citing the juror's candor and willingness to come forward.
Listen, that's really screwed up. Okay, first of all, she's saying she doesn't remember if he even testified, but yet she was on a juror that granted him this stuff.
Right.
That you're a liar. You're a liar, and Strange should have got his way. She should have not been on there at all.
How did she get picked to be a juror in this case at all? I mean, like, I sometimes wonder how random it really is. You know what I mean?
Like, Betty gave her $10,000 to vote guilty. Eric Banana says, "I'm surprised
you never know. You don't know.
Of things paid off.
You just don't know. A lot of things
overlooked.
And if it's less than $10,000 in cash that he gave to somebody, they won't. That's not flagged by the IRS. It's got to be a bigger amount.
That's considered a gift.
So
you don't even have to pay taxes on it. So, yep, that's true.
It's just weird. Anyway.
The whole jury system here is fouled.
I'm sorry, but I don't really trust the jury system anymore. These people don't even realize that these people are presumed innocent. They are innocent from what know, no matter what the media told you. He is innocent when he walks in that court and sits before you to hear his trial, and they don't seem to get it. There's a woman also in that All Things Manitowoc. She was a jury. She was picked to be questioned on. She had a jury voir dire, but they didn't pick her, and part of that was because she was like, well, he has to prove he's 100% innocent. No, he doesn't. They got to prove he's guilty.
They should have outsourced from another state for a jury for this. I believe in cases that are high profile like this.
Wanting a jury from his own county. He thought, well, they know they fucked him over in the first case, that they're going to try to do it again. They can't even look at that, Avery, because that's not part of this case either. They have to go by what's presented at court. And,
people don't
you really should have just gone to another county, another state, anything you could do. Like, even Judge Willis was a Manitowoc County judge. He wasn't. The only thing they seemed to have changed was the building.
Well,
that's not how a change of venue should be.
If I'm not mistaken, they all live in a very small rural area. People don't forget major events in their life, and being on a jury is a major event for them. I'm sorry, you just don't forget that. You don't forget the things that Stephen was accused of, and some people still believed to be true. Okay, that's stuff you don't forget. They should have outsourced out of a different state, had them bust in and down on lock and key where they were not allowed to discuss anything. That
And
is a
we're
fair juror. Then
right.
that's fair
It shouldn't
jury
have
pool.
even been in Calumet County, Dane County, or
It shouldn't have been.
it shouldn't have been in either one of these three counties that had
No.
like Calumet was a lead investigator on the case. You know what I mean? Like their county. This is a county woman from that area. Then you have Dane County who came in for, I believe that's who they picked for Brendan's trial to come into Manitowoc. And they're just like where it's like that's the county that the Capitol building. And so you're going to have a bunch of people that are like, I don't know. It just, it
It
seems so.
spreads throughout the counties. They're too close. They should have outsourced from a different state. I mean, I would have done that if I was the defense lawyer. I would have said, nope, can't do this here. It's too prejudiced against everything. Everybody here is family to somebody. They're all, it should be just being related to the police officers. I'm sorry, that gives you a biased blue line thinking. You're not going to
That's
go
what I
against
think.
them.
Yeah.
And you're human. So I'm not saying it's wrong to feel that way. I'm just saying it's that way, and you have to be honest about it. That's the way it is.
It's like, I found out this woman named Lori Lee who had laughed at a picture people posted on the Stephen Avery guilty group about me, changed my sign to say something like, we'll work for teeth or something. And come to find out, this woman is actually a first cousin of Tom Kasorik as well. So, I was talking to her also in that All Things Manitowoc one day, and I was just like, I said, this is the kind of thing you like to do. You like to egg on people who abuse other people. So I really don't have much to say to you. She was talking about some front gate at Avery's, making it sound like they had some like actual
like they were
fenced
gated
gate
in,
or
right?
something, but they're not. And come to find out so I get it though. I mean, I get why she's defending her family. Wouldn't you defend your family if they're being accused of something too? So I kind of get why they do it. I mean, it's human nature, so it's not like I can blame them for it. I would probably do the same if it was my cousin or something being under attack and I didn't have all the facts, and I would be biased towards that. So I get it. It's just
Yeah, look, even any high profile case, you have to outsource because everybody in the state has heard about it before you get jury pools. You know what I'm saying?
And they didn't just hear about this case. They heard about Avery because of the first wrongful
right.
conviction
They heard
and
that he
the
was
lawsuit.
suing, and
Right.
exactly. They
So,
knew
yeah.
more about Stephen Avery than they probably cared to, honestly. But you cannot tell me that these people in a small town that don't have a whole lot going on, there's no big newses like, I mean, this is a big thing. Okay, Stephen's first case was a big thing. His lawsuit was a big thing. Him getting out was a big thing. These people are going to remember that. Same with her saying she doesn't know if he even came on stand. She was in the jury. Don't tell me that. Then how do you know? I mean, how can you vote if you don't remember how can you vote correctly on a jury if you don't remember who came on stand and testified? What a bunch of shit
in
that
her
is.
defense, it was 7 years earlier.
I don't care. I would remember that. She would too.
She obviously recognized him when he took the stand because she called him out by name, right? Like, I don't know. She actually called
and
him
as you notice, though, Strand and Buting really, they didn't get the way they wanted with their jury. I mean, if you read the transcripts, you'll see that they wanted people out and they got voted in. It's just different.
You only have so
the
many
way they
times
ran these lawyers or whatever they're called is crazy.
You can only strike so many jurors from this.
Right.
Each team has only so many. But the problem is if Manitowoc didn't randomly pick them and they actually handpicked them to be these people that served on a jury, what options did they really have? All of the people, for all we know, that were picked for the 100 to do the questionnaire may have had some kind of relationship to an LE officer of some sort.
Did.
We just don't know. So even if they got to strike some of them, they couldn't strike them all because
you're not going to get a great difference in jury pool in a small town. I'm sorry, you're just not. Yep. They're all running politically the same. I'm sorry, you're just not going to. It's not like you're in a big city. It's really isn't. And you're going to get what you get, which is this. Everybody related to everybody and screwed from the get-go.
And knows everybody.
And they planned it this way anyway. I don't give a shit. Nobody's going to sit in a pizza parlor with a fucking jury and stare them down. Come on, that's a scare
That
tactic
that's
without
that's
words.
intimidation.
Yes,
Yes, I would
without
think so.
words. Scare
Yes.
technique without words. It sure is. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Let's move on. We got a couple more to do. I don't know how many I've done so far, but we got Sharon Thorne is next. She was 47, waitress from Greenleaf. She consumes little news and knows little about the case. And she gets asked, "Are you a computer person at all?" And she says, "No, I don't have a computer." Okay. Now, in response to one question here, if you were aware of the publicity, you didn't answer yes, but you answered further with a brief explanation, and you said just some news coverage, local Green Bay channels, very little. As a result of that information, you went on to say you haven't really formed any opinions in this case. And she says no. I couldn't exactly find the direct quote for her, but that was the best I could do. Sharon Thorne is related to Charles L. Thorne, who isn't necessarily an LE or anything, but it does say in his obituary that he was employed at Great Iron Foundry and later at the Manitowoc County in the maintenance department. So it sounds like he works for the Manitowoc County in the maintenance department, which would probably be like a garbage man or one of the people who do the street stuff. That's what I think the maintenance people do. Like they come and clean the streets, that kind of thing. So he worked for the county, but he wasn't an officer. And I just pulled survivors include Terry Thorne, Sharon Thorne of Greenleaf. So you know that that's her dad working for the county. That's all I found on her. She didn't have really much more to say. Then let's move on to Carl Wardman. He was the 61 Manitowoc retired. Would police lie under oath? He says, yeah, because they could get away with it. And he should know, right? And he let them. Do you think that the police officers would come into court and lie? And he says, yeah. And he says, under oath? And he says, yeah. And they ask him why. And he says, because they can get away with it. How do you get away with it? Some judges believe them. Okay. And juries as well. And he says, yep. And he's one of them. So let's talk about Wardman. This was an article released in 2016 by Jessica McBride. These are little comments. Sheriff Herman said of Wardman's volunteerism for the department, he applied on 9/17/2006 and added that Wardman likely started with the department in October of 2006. Court transcripts say November. He said Wardman worked 4 hours as a volunteer in 2006. In 2007, though, the year that Avery trial occurred, Workman worked 301.5 hours as a Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department volunteer and was one of the department's most active volunteers in terms of hours, said Herman. Wardman is still a volunteer, said Herman, and he sees Wardman pretty regularly when he does things like taking squad cars in for services. Herman said that he did not have the specific dates that Wardman worked in 2007, just that he worked a total of 301.5 hours, more than most volunteers that year.
Wow. Wow.
So he became a volunteer sheriff in October, November 2006, about the same time Alice Moore came back to work for the county. 3 or 4 months later, he's picked to be a juror. And then he gets to work the most hours that year as a volunteer. Is that not payment for his services? Because it sure as hell
Sure it
sounds
is.
like it.
Sure, you do this for me. Yep, we'll do that. Yep, gotcha.
Another thing I want to point
Check.
out is he had a son, Christopher Wardman. He was a sergeant at the jail. So he worked for the department, for the Sheriff's Department too, at the jail. He was a deputy at the
They're all
jail.
tied. It's just fucking
Jessica
ridiculous.
McBride of on Milwaukee.com reports that one Avery juror, Carl Wardman, was a volunteer for the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department and that his son worked for the Sheriff's Department during the trial. Another juror reportedly told me that the Making a Murderer filmmakers, that he or she felt pressured for their personal safety if they voted not guilty, but that he or she believed Avery was not proven guilty. That's probably Muller. Muller is the one who constantly would talk about that.
Well, I don't care. They should, you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know.
Here's just another picture of this was in the Herald Times Reporter. I haven't been able to find this actual article. She used it that on Milwaukee had this posted on their site too. So I just threw this in there because, of course, it shows Carl Wardman in his volunteer car, and you know, he's performing his duties and all of that stuff. So let's go back here though, but because this is more recent, and I just wanted to point this out that he was still an officer. They did say that. This is them talking about how the volunteers have passed 100,000 hour milestone, and that Carl Wardman is listed. He contributed more than 800 hours in 2013 and more than 4,000 total. He also coordinates all parade appearances. And it also says that Holmes and Geneva Dueno, I want to point that out. And then in the back row from left are Don Hamill, Carl Wardman, Ed Vetting, and all the rest. Geneva Dueno is the mother to Diane Free, who also seems to be a sheriff's volunteer at some point in her life as well. So that's Diane Free, who we talked about a little earlier. I noticed this when I put this in here, that she was also a volunteer, and I wonder how long she was a volunteer. Was she a volunteer back in 2007? I don't know, but I will definitely be looking into that. And then, oopsie. Oh, look at that. I put a little thing in there. I forgot about those. Shh, don't tell anyone. And then we have the Anonymous Juror. I haven't, I don't know if you guys remember, but this one came out in 2016, shortly after Making a Murderer, where Riccardi said that the juror who contacted them has been living with his decision for 8 years now. It seems to us, based on what this person told us, that they were choosing essentially between their personal safety and freedom versus having to live with the guilt of having voted the way that they did, she added. On the Today Show, Riccardi said the juror told us the verdicts in Stephen Avery's trial were a compromise. That was the actual word the juror used, and went on to describe the jurors ultimately trading votes in the jury room, explicitly discussing, if you vote guilty on this count, I will vote not guilty on this count. That was a significant revelation. According to the juror, the finding of not guilty on the count of mutilating a corpse, a split verdict, was intended to send a message to the appellate courts, Demos said. Now, I was privy to get a direct message screenshot from the juror. I will not mention the juror. I will not even put in the words of the person talking to the juror, but I have put in what the juror had said to another person. This person wants to be anonymous for his safety, or for their safety, so let's just keep it that way. So this is what the person said. Newsflash for you, out of a stater, and I mean that in no disrespect. I do appreciate your concern and keep it going. I was a juror and also dealt with this as personally as Richard did, probably more. I even had Colburn stop at my house claiming there was a 911 hang up call. He didn't even get out of his car to investigate. Fear? Yes, that's what they do. He says, I have my conspiracies, but nothing that can be proven in court because there is no evidence. Remember this one word, compromise. Good night and good talking with you. They said, I wish I could feel comfortable running my mouth, opinion, feelings. Unfortunately, I live here and have seen firsthand what can happen to someone they don't like. There is no justice to Teresa's family. I understand that. How are they ever going to know who really killed her after all of this? And that was the anonymous juror. And that's all I have on the jurors. I will put in some more links. I did not finish my linking in the end here. But that's it. I mean, that's pretty much all I have on the jurors and the connections there. But I was voted to do this. So this is everything I have as far as connections and interesting tidbits on the jury. If there's any questions or comments, now's the time.
Well, let me just say this. I am very glad you did it because I read the voyeur, whatever they're called.
The
When
voir
they're doing
the
that,
voir
right?
dire. I'm learning
Yeah,
it's
voir
voir dire.
dires, and I seen it dirty then, but then when you put it together as to who was on there and who was doing what and everything else, you make it so much clearer. You really do. Great job, Eric says. I agree. Very good job. Excellent. A lot of information. TTM said that too. So yeah, but it
Yeah.
is a small town. Small town ties are very strong, and the small town, you get this. You get people who have been grandfathered in forever and ever, and they are going to be the sheep following the herd, and that's exactly what it is. No fair trial at all, in my eyes.
I
Hello,
agree. This case has
hello,
everything
Crockett.
so dirty, Paul Ward. I agree with you there.
Yep. Hey, Crockett. Nice to see you.
Let's see if I can go through some of these.
No questions, anybody? Let me see. I'll go back and see.
Eric Bananaman says Wardman is friends with Herman on Facebook, who
Yeah.
ended up being is that Rob Herman or Todd? Both of them did work for the department. Rob was sheriff.
Yeah, all them volunteer hours. Come on now.
Yeah,
Jesus.
right. 301 from 4 hours in 2006, the last 4 months of the year, to 301. Come
Yeah.
on.
Oh,
And the
Eric
most of
says Rob.
any of the volunteers, which Rob Herman would be the well, I guess retired now sheriff. He was sheriff after Peterson and ran against Colburn,
Yeah.
but obviously Rob won.
Absolutely freaking horrendous what they did to Stephen. If anything, if nothing else, a fair trial certainly was not given. Not at all.
It's only an hour T1, so it's not very long. You just have to go
Rewatch.
back and rewatch it. Other than
Faith,
that, I
who's
think.
Faith Fritchitz?
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to do some research on her. Would you like me to do some research on Faye Fritch? Fritch? I don't even know how you'd say her name.
Yes, JJX. Them, the Dassy ones are there. I'm like, how did these people even get on that? I was saying that when we were reading them, they were crazy.
I did help partake, I think, in reading some of
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I haven't really done a lot of research into Dassey's trial. Dassey's trial came from Dane County, other than reading some of the voir dires. So maybe we'll have to go through one of theirs and see how many jurors and stuff are related to people out there. One thing I do remember about a juror for Brendan's trial, while we're on the juries, is there was I think his name was Robert Covington. You can look him up. He has recently or since has passed away, so he's no longer alive. But
Oh.
he did have an interview with someone in the journalistic area, and he said that him and another juror had questioned the competence of Brendan. Like, did they think he was even competent to be doing this trial, to be in this trial? Was he competent enough? And the other jurors told them that it was not their job to decide that. But in a lot
Yeah,
of ways,
exactly.
it kind of is. If they had questions about that, they should not have asked the other jurors and should have taken that question to the judge, But I don't, people don't know what to expect when they're in a jury. I wouldn't know. I've never been on a jury before. I wouldn't even know how to, you know, take the things that they're telling you to do. It's like, I can't imagine what they felt like. Like, they probably did not know that they could ask the judge that question. You know what I mean? Like, and they probably really could have. Even if it was minute and the judge says it doesn't matter, they should have asked the judge, in my opinion. So I
Yeah.
found that article kind of interesting. It was him and another juror.
Oh, Eric Banana Man says she was a nurse at the Aurora Center for DNA, and she's the one that swabbed.
Well, I know she's the
Stephen.
snap one, but I don't know if she has any I don't know if she has any connections to anybody, so I'm not quite sure about that. T1 asks, where did the 732 jury equation come from? He forgets. I believe that was something that Richard Muller had talked about, possibly even on MAM. But I know that that was something I believe Muller talked about, because Muller was in the jury room for that initial vote before he was removed. And I believe it is him who talks about that. I'll have to find, it might be in an article or something. I'll have to look that up for you.
Friends with Herman on Facebook too. I mean, you know, I don't know. Only thing I can say is that small town ties, they run very deep and they're very strong. And you can see that. You can see that in this, you know, I'm sure if you looked in other screwed up wrongful convictions, you'd see pretty much the same shit. You know?
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Like I said, if I was Dean and Strand, I would have outsourced it up from a different state. A state that wasn't even, I mean, Minnesota didn't even know what this was going on until after the movie came out. I'm telling you that right now. I walk around and I've been here all my life. I never heard of it. My parents didn't hear about it. And I know people that watch the news all the time. They never heard of that shit either. Nothing of it. Nothing.
And so, Alice, it wasn't a fair trial, in my opinion. It was faulted and tainted from the beginning,
from the press conference
to the end that is today, where they are denying him the right to his civil rights to show that he's innocent. They're just blocking her at every move. It's just an ongoing thing.
Well, I think we all agree that it really probably didn't take much and that many to plant and convict, but they thought ahead of time to keep that conviction by getting rid of all the DNA, by, you know, just the steps they've taken since he's been in is something that they prove they want to keep him in.
Right.
You know, they want to keep him in.
T1, I think that they were swayed by the 3 actual people related to the cops. Those were probably the 3 that were guilty at first: Diane Free, Paul Nielsen, and Carl Wardman, who all had connections to police officers at some point in their life. Look at me, look at me learning how to use my little sidebar here.
Yeah, I learned it too. If you guys have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe, the little bell. Please leave a little thumbs up for Jinxie.
I like it when you
get to 1,000. She's working her way there. Come on, y'all want her to keep doing something. Give her a reason to do it.
If there's nothing else, I guess I will work on some of the other options I had given you guys on that poll, which was Wendy Baldwin, a live about the Ryan Hillgas, last part 2, or another case completely. So I have the other case completely already done in a slideshow, so that might be the next thing you guys see. But I will work on the Wendy Baldwin stuff, and if anybody ever does want to do a live on the Ryan stuff and have a Q&A, maybe just leave me a comment. Maybe we'll figure out a good time for everybody, and all you lovely people can come on with me and ask me your questions.
There you go. Q&A with the Jinx. Couldn't get any better. I'll be there for that. Thank you, Jinx.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Linda, for being my eyes and ears in the chat. And you all have a wonderful, wonderful hump day. And I will be back soon.
One announcement. Don't forget tomorrow, 2:00, Nosy Ren and me are going to have a talk. So
why don't you put that link in there before we close out this channel? Put it in the little chat there.
Just give me 1 second.
Nosy's going to be on with Linda tomorrow. I'm excited.
Yep, I am too. I'm excited.
See what that nosy bugger's up to these days.
We're going to start just showing everybody that what we got going on around here. So here you go. There's a link for that tomorrow, 2 p.m. Nosy, 2 p.m. Central.
And then I will let you guys all go.
There you go. There's the link. Please join us. Can't wait to see you all there. Thank you
You
so
guys
much.
have a good night. Thanks again, Linda. You guys have a good day. Bye,
Have a good
guys.
day. Bye.
And ladies.